My name is Mike Green with Mike Green and Associates. We're a two-person booking agency, not a management company. We just do the touring, representing artists and getting them their work. It's a two-person agency. I do all the booking and a lot of work directly with the artists, and my wife is my business partner, does all the financial management, website, contract administration, all the other pieces that make the thing run. And we've been in business since the beginning of 2004.
How have you found things you need to do to make it click?
For the agency in general, as opposed to just the conferences?
Sure.
Some of it is learning. We've clarified what our bottom lines are, which are financial is one of them, and we have to pay attention to it, but we've found that when we stray from sort of what we know we're good at and what our sort of values are as an organization, as people, we've not done very well. And as we've been truer to that over the last several years, things have just gotten a lot better, and it seems to be the natural flow. We represent artists that are, well, first of all, we're relatively focused in doing folk and traditional roots kind of music. It's stuff that we understand, and we know, and we love. So we only represent artists that we're really enthusiastic about. They are artists who really make a real impact out there in the world. We don't look at it as sheer entertainment, although the artists have to be very entertaining. They have to know how to do a show, but there's a lot of depth to make their audiences think. And the audiences that come to these shows, it's a really important event. When certain artists come there, it's like the most important event of the year for their serious fans. So it's really gratifying to kind of be involved with artists that are going out there making a difference. We now represent artists who have very, very little ego, all of them. They're nice people to work with, and they're aware that their public persona is their job. And they don't confuse it with being more important than anybody else, which is really nice. So we know they're not going to go out there and drive people crazy backstage, and and they also need to have their business together. So we don't represent people who are at the beginning of their careers. We're not set up to do that anymore. So all those pieces go in. The more we follow that, things go better. So we have. One is we now have a reputation as an agency for representing certain kinds of artists, certain genres, and working in that particular style of just trying to work fairly with people and trying to come to negotiations where everybody feels good about it. And I found that the more I lean in that direction, again, the less I push, but the more I look for a fit and then try to make that work. Once it actually fits, then things go well. But it's also, there's no substitute for just putting in the hours and just working really hard.
But you must have to do some research to find new fits, hopefully.
Yes, to some degree. Artists, for the most part, that we represent, they mostly come to us. It's kind of a small world. If an artist is in this genre, there's a relative handful of agencies that really do it and understand what they do. So the agents, we all know each other, and there are artists that will move from one to another where there's maybe a better fit. There's one band that we're working with now who was with two other agencies, and I know both of those agencies, and they kind of didn't get much attention at one, were kind of unhappy with another, and came to us, and we just have this, from the day they came in the door, it's just been bam, bam, they're working more than they ever were. The work was out there, but the fit wasn't right. So, and what's been happening lately is the last 3 artists that we've signed, including this band, started with a referral from somebody else that we've been representing for a long time. So that feels really pretty good. It's basically saying good job, you know. So there's one artist on the roster that we did actively go after, and have only had to do that one time. And I knew there were other agents in line. Part of what helped them decide on us is the referral, looking at what we've done for the other agents, the other artists on our roster. So that's part of, a lot of it is that, and just the longevity of just hanging around a long time and knowing people and learning, and then we just learn to trust each other.
And so not a new artist that's not been to many of these conferences or any of them, and they're looking for representation, and they came to you here's an agent. Would you represent me? But, they're a Broadway show artist.
Oh, well.
Would you possibly then recommend that they speak to one of your other colleagues and refer them on?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Always just looking for the fit. I've realized relatively recently that I think a lot of agents sort of have a natural matchmaker gene, and we just look to do that, but we have to make sure that we get paid for some of it. And it really comes down to that. Now like I'm relatively later in my career, I've just turned 60, and there are all these things that I'm drawn to do that have no payment associated with them. Like helping to develop a mentoring program through NAPAMA, and I'm not going to get paid for that, but I'm going to carve out time to do it. And it's, again, that's all matchmaking. So it's really nice when you can refer somebody somewhere else. And my notes from the conference this week are full of, send this person that other contact. I met with a presenter yesterday in West Virginia whose mindset seemed to be a lot like a couple of other presenters who do really creative work. I think they're going to like each other. So I'm just going to send them, you should look at each other's calendars and how do you put together your seasons. And in a way, that can lead to good stuff for us because, again, people do business with people that they trust and that they like. It comes back around, but that's not the motivation for doing it. And what I'm finding lately is doing all that stuff it is kind of coming back, but if you do that, if you do favors for people with that in mind, they're not favors. It just happens to come around. So
I seem to recall, not too long ago, didn't you chair one of the regional conferences?
Yeah, I chaired Arts Midwest in Minneapolis, and I think it was 2 years ago, and it was really one of the high points of my professional career. Arts Midwest is a great organization, really, really great staff who have been there a long time, and one of the reasons the conference works so well is that they listen to everybody. So first I was really honored when they asked me to do it. I didn't think I was sort of in that club. And it was partially that happened because I tended to give them feedback on a regular basis, not just through the questionnaire at the end of the conference, but by telling them what had worked well and what I really appreciated, and I got to know the staff over the years. So that's part of, they kind of knew that I was really engaged with the process. And what they have the co-chairs do is just give a lot of input. All the actual work of the conference, all the logistics, that's all done by the staff. But they look to bounce ideas off of a couple of co-chairs, plus some committees that they usually have, like a local committee from the region that gives a lot of input on professional development session ideas and keynote speaker ideas. But then Laurel Cannon, not Laurel, she was a different one, Dana Martinez from the Ordway Center in St. Paul. We were in on a whole bunch of conference calls. It's funny, when I got the call to do this, I immediately called other people I knew had been co-chairs, including Jeff Laramie, who was just in here. I called 2 or 3, and they all said, essentially, say yes as fast as you can, and then I'll tell you why. Because it was such a good experience. I learned so much about the whole field, about other people, and it was a chance to realize what I had learned in all these years and to apply some of that to the conference. And in a way, like the way that I have the criteria for who we represent, we were looking for certain criteria of who we wanted to be keynote speakers. And I didn't know this going in, but what I was looking for was somebody who could really engage the audience in an entertaining way, but have it be really relevant to their actual lives and work for this particular community that would speak to everybody in the room. It shouldn't be just for presenters or just for artists. It really had to be something that was that big, and also have something tangible that they could take away with like a kick in the butt. It's like, now you go back to your work and you can do this better, and here's some actual skills or ideas of what you can do with this. And I didn't come up with who the speakers were, but as all these ideas kept filtering in, I kept bringing that to the fore. And what we got was so great. Dana, I know, brought in one of the ideas, people who put together a program called Children of Uganda. The other was a woman who ran a really interesting theater company in Minneapolis, but they both presented in a way everybody was moved, and it made us better people and made us do better work. So the experience was fantastic. And I think that Western Arts, like all of the conferences, have people who are involved on some kind of committee level, and it's really cool work to serve your field. And it's different than, say, going and helping homeless people in your community, which, you need to do that work, but also I make a living in this field and I want to give back to it. And it felt like an opportunity more than it felt like work, which is what the other co-chairs told me. It's like, it's going to feel like a lot of work, but you just do it. You get so much out of it, and it's so gratifying. And it really was. Yeah.
How was it that your life's path brought you here? Were you always an agent?
No. Wasn't born an agent. I played, going back, like in high school, I started playing some music, playing guitar and playing coffee house kind of stuff, and I organized some stuff at the local Y. I went to school to be a high school drama teacher, and I can't quite imagine how I came around to that, but I was interested in it. I dropped out after a couple of years and started playing music. So I booked myself for a couple of years, and I've said so many times to other people, I was better at getting hired than getting asked back. I don't think I had anything special to say, but I got like college coffee house gigs and bars and stuff for a couple of years. I did not really like living on the road, especially because they weren't good gigs and I was sleeping on couches and stuff. Went back to school to study business, and I ended up getting a job. I won't tell the whole story, but I ended up getting a job running a folk music center in Minneapolis called the Coffee House Extempore. And in the upper Midwest, that was like the main place. So it's like sitting at the center of this whole folk music world. And we did a lot of business with an agency at that point called Fleming and Associates. And everybody on their roster we would book, and I liked working with them. Eventually, through other stuff, I ended up working for that agency a few years later, and did that for 7 years. My wife and I moved to North Carolina, started a catering business. That's another whole story. It didn't work. We moved back. They hired me back. We went back to Ann Arbor, Michigan, did that for 6 more years. And then I was just like ready to do my own thing. And my wife really kicked me in the butt. Like, I always thought that, all the people who actually own agencies, they know a lot more than I do. She said, everybody's just improvising all the time. And so I did. And that's where we are. There's a lot of stuff a lot of circuitous things that happened in there, but that's the general story.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, the thing when I had I had one agent job actually before that that only lasted 6 or 8 months. But when I kind of sat down at the desk, I'd done some presenting, and I'd also been a touring artist, like not on a very high level, but I understood both jobs. So when I was sitting there trying to put together tours, I realized like I'm sitting between the presenter and the artist, and I understand both situations, so I'm a mediator. I'm just like getting this stuff to happen, and I realized that I knew how to do that almost right away. So yeah, that was like the natural fit. I didn't know that job really existed in that way until I was asked to do it. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.